Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks to everyone who's coming on. Welcome to all of my replay viewers. Thank you guys for joining. If you did not get to catch me live and you want to chat with me, you can always tweet at me at Love Hope Advent, and that's my Twitter name. I'm going to flip my camera around now so I can talk with you guys. Hello. If this is your first time with me, my name is Keely. I'm the owner of lovehopeadventure.com, where I blog about the marriage relationship, intimacy in marriage, and how you can have a closer relationship with your spouse and enjoy each other more. So I'm all for healthy marriages and healthy relationships. And sometimes I do some lifestyle posts, so you might see some crafting. Hey, Julie, I'm glad you're coming on. Sometimes I do crafting and recipes and just general lifestyle posts. In the last couple of days, I have been talking a lot about body positive messages, which was requested of me. And today I want to take a little break from that, even though I probably will talk about body positive stuff later on. And for those of you who are coming on, I did want to let you know about a giveaway I'm doing. I have a 1-year devotional prayer book. And if you would like to enter this giveaway, you can tweet at me. Love Hope Advent is my Twitter handle. And you can just say, I want to enter your giveaway. I'm running the submissions up until Friday, and then I will pick somebody. And this is a leather-bound book. It's really nice. Each day it has a little devotional thought and a scripture and also an evening prayer. So it's nice, and it's leather. So if you would like to enter that giveaway, be sure to tweet at me. I want to enter your giveaway. I also blog at lovehopeadventure.com. So if you want to connect with me over there, you can do that. You can go to my contact page where you'll see my email address. So there's plenty of ways to talk with me. And today I wanted to kind of talk with you about how to handle if your spouse is doing things you don't like or you don't agree with. And let's just be real here. All of us deal with this, right? All of us have times where our spouse does things that we don't approve of. Whether it is, okay, I hope that this really helps you, all right? Because I think that you guys might not like what I have to say, though, so I just want to go ahead and give forewarning to that, all right? Because this is very hard. It's very hard to navigate real issues in your marriage. Now, the process is basically the same, whether or not your spouse is doing something that you don't care for all that much, such as like, oh, well, my spouse never wants to pick up their dirty socks, or my spouse doesn't want to load the dishwasher the way I like it. And I could say that those things, I'm going to tell you something, it's the little things oftentimes that will kill your marriage because you don't give as much attention to them. So if your spouse says to you, I really want you to load the dishwasher this way, and you think, well, that's not a big deal. Honestly, it's those little things a lot of times that I find will destroy a marriage. Yes, dirty socks is not a mountain I would die on either, but there is something behind it. And I always try to tell people that when there is a problem in your marriage, you have to figure out what's the root of the problem here. And when it comes to something like a house chore, dirty socks or whatever, I think a lot of times there can often be some underlying issues. For example, if I was the one that had the problem with socks being on the floor or a chore being left undone, but I was the main person who cleaned my house, I would feel as though my spouse was leaving those things for me to do and would look at me as more like a maid than their, partner. And so I think that for some people, when you're like, oh, well, that's just not a big deal or whatever, I think we cannot ever minimize someone's feelings because we don't understand where they're coming from. And we should always be looking for how is it that this is really making them feel? Because more often than not, it has nothing to do with that mundane thing that you think isn't a big deal. There's so much deeper things going on there. And so you might be in a relationship right now where your spouse is doing something or making decisions that you don't agree with, whether they are morally doing things wrong. Maybe you've caught them in an affair. Maybe you have caught them having a relationship with someone that you don't want them to continue that relationship, or maybe they are making a lifestyle choice that you don't like. Maybe they are, like I said with the chores, maybe they just don't put the toilet seat down and you're like, I really want you to do that. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, doing chores tells your husband you love him. Okay, so yeah, and that's a love language thing. And if you didn't do that, your real problem isn't not doing the chores. Your real problem is not communicating love to your spouse. So regardless of what it is that your spouse is doing that you don't like or don't agree with or even don't approve of, because you shouldn't approve of it. No one should approve of affairs with their spouse. No one should approve of inappropriate relationships. But regardless of what the problem is, you've got the same process that you have to go through. And first of all, the process starts with talking with your spouse about it. Now, you can't just go in there and start telling them what to do. And you have to have those conversations tactfully. I may not be the best person to give advice on this one because I am not a tactful person. But because I'm not that tactful, I can tell you that if I go into a conversation the wrong way, the response from my husband is going to not be positive. Okay? I am unfortunately a very blunt person. I walk in the room, I'm like, now you need to do whatever, okay? That is going to put him off of his guard. And, he's going to be like, okay, yeah, don't nag and don't confront. And I read Sheila too over at To Love, Honor, and Vacuum. And you cannot nag your spouse, and you cannot come in and be their mom or dad. That's something we really got to think about right here and now, okay? This relationship with your spouse is not a parent-child relationship. So you cannot treat them as your kid. You don't get to discipline your spouse. You don't get to mandate things for them that they must do. But what you can do is go to them in a respectful way and ask them to help you solve a problem that you have. So maybe your problem is the dishes are a wreck and you need some help getting the dishes straight, right? So if you go to them and be like, you need to do the dishes. Listen, you are going to put them, they're going to come to you and be like, okay, well, dishes aren't my problem. That's, I'm not the only one around here eating. But if you went to them and said, hey, the dishes are constantly piling up. What can we do to fix that? That's very different. So whatever it is you're dealing with in the issues with your spouse, you have to go to them and have real communication with them. Approach them in a way that isn't going to cause them to put their guard up and be defensive. Because the moment you start seeing your spouse be defensive, they are going to lash out and you're going to lash out. And then you're just going to be in a big argument over something that seemed really minimal at the time, and now it's this power struggle. I mean, haven't you ever done that with your kids? You walk into your kids' room and you're like, hey, could you pick up that toy right there? And then they have an all-out fit in the floor. And when it was not really that big of a deal, they had the fit, and now it is a big deal. And it's like, well, I have to make them pick up this toy now, because if I don't, then they're going to think fit throwing is the way to get their, way. And I don't want to do that. With your spouse, though, it is so different. And when you start entering battle with your spouse, or with anybody for that matter, you go head to head and both of you are going to lose, because you're both going to do these power play things trying to get the other one to submit. And that isn't helpful for any relationship. And because your spouse is not your child, you can't punish them when they are doing things you don't like. Does that mean you don't punish them? I think we do. I think we oftentimes, when our spouse is not making the changes we ask out of them, we start finding ways to punish them. We might guilt trip them into trying to get them to do what we want them to do. Maybe we give them the silent treatment, or maybe we withhold affection or love in some way or another. Or maybe we just have a really bad attitude toward them and let them know that we're just upset that they're not doing what we wanted them to do. So we do punish each other, but I'm going to tell you something. The Bible never has ever told us to punish or to discipline, rather, our spouses. We're instructed to discipline our children because that's our role. that's that role in those relationships. But a husband-wife relationship isn't like that. You're a team with your spouse. You are you need to get on the same page. And if you have done the silence treatment or withheld sex or whatever, I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to get them to do what you want them to do. If they, decide that they're going to be more stubborn than you, you guys are just going to destroy each other. And I'm a pretty stubborn person. And so really, entering power struggles for me, and I enter them all the time with my kids especially. But the minute I do, it's like, I must win. No, that's never good. It's never good to be like, well, I'm going to be more stubborn than they are. No, not a good thing when it comes to your marriage, because that's not resolution. So once you go to your spouse and you explain to them why you feel the way you do about something, you have to give them time to try and make the adjustment. They may not hear you. They may not believe that you're all that serious. They may not even understand how much it's affecting you. But you need to at least give them a chance. If you find that they're not changing that behavior, then you have the ability to go to them again and say, hey, I thought we talked about this, and you said that you were going to do whatever. You were going to make some changes. And have the conversation again, but not in a nagging way. Again, you're not their parent. So you can't nag them and be like, well, you didn't do it, and now you're going to be in trouble. No, they're your spouse. You have to work with them in a relationship. So go to them again and share with them what you're doing is still bothering me, or what you're not doing is still bothering me. All right? And if they still don't make the change, here's where you have to land. You can't change them. You can only decide how you're going to react. How are you going to react to them not making those changes that you want them to make? A lot of people, like we already discussed, react poorly. You try to punish, you try to force, you try to coerce them, whatever it takes to get them to do what you want them to do. That's not a relationship. It's certainly not a healthy one. Some people will, maybe they will just try and threaten. That's another form of punishment. And guys, I do not ever recommend you threatening your spouse. Don't threaten to leave them, please. The minute you start threatening to leave your spouse, you're destroying your relationship. And I don't care what it is that they're doing or not doing. If you're going to leave because you're in a situation in which you need to leave, leave. Don't threaten it, just leave. Don't ever tell your spouse you're going to do something that is crazy if you're not actually planning to follow through with it. And the Bible teaches us, let your yes be yes, your no be no, which means be a person of your word, even in your marriage. So don't threaten things. Don't make crazy statements like, well, I'm never going to have sex with you again, or I'm never going to whatever again, or I'm going to leave you. No, don't do that. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Make reasonable response and follow through with whatever it is you've decided. Now, if you are in error for what you said because you had a gut reaction, then you need to go back and tell them, I'm sorry for saying that. I wish I hadn't, and we need to move forward in this. We need to work through it. So you can't change your spouse. You shouldn't even try to punish them and force them to do something different. And let me tell you something, I've done that. I went head to head with my husband for a long time about some things. And I'm going to tell you something, I was wrong. I was wrong. And there have been times when he's gone like that with me, and he's been wrong. And I wish I had handled those situations better. But we grow, we change. We have to have those battles with our spouse and cross those lines so that we can know where to set the boundaries the next time. You're going to blow it. You're going to do the wrong thing. You're going to go overboard and have to step back and reevaluate and go, okay, guys, we can't do this anymore. You know that fight we just had the other night? We can't keep doing that. So we've got to reevaluate and come up with a new way to talk with each other, a better way to work through it, right? And if your spouse is immovable about that situation, and I'm serious, I don't care how serious the situation is, whether it's the socks or the dishes or it's extramarital relationships or affairs or whatever, you have to talk with them first, give them the time to change their behavior, talk with them again, and then in all of that, you have to decide, how am I going to react to him or her in this situation? Okay, so for example, a very serious situation, if your spouse is having an affair, you can't make them stop having that affair, so don't try, all right? But what you can do is say, well, you're not acting like my spouse right now, so we're going to have to, separate, or we're going to have to stop acting as a husband and wife because you are breaking these promises right now, all right? No one can tell you how you should react or respond, but you can only change your own behaviors. You can't change theirs. So you have to decide, what will I do when my spouse doesn't do the dishes like I want him to or her to? I know I'm saying him a lot, but that's because I'm a woman and I have a husband and I say him a lot. And but I am talking about men and women here, okay, because we all have issues in marriage. So if it's something like a chore, you have to decide, okay, am I going to be okay with letting the socks pile up in the floor? Or am I just going to pick the socks up myself? That's the two choices you have. Leave them there and eventually the other person will get it, or do it yourself. But don't nag. Don't go back and be like, but you never do it, okay? Give them time. When every pair of socks they own is in the floor, eventually they're going to pick their socks up, right? And if they don't, that's their problem. They need to go forward and figure it out and fix it for themselves. So sometimes I think in our relationships, we have an issue with our partner, with our spouse, and we want them to make a change, but then we don't even give them the time to do it. We don't allow them to live with the consequences of their own decisions, okay? So consequences aren't always bad. I mean, honestly, there's just like a chain reaction. I have an affair on my spouse. My spouse says, relationship's over, okay? Or I have a affair on my spouse, and my spouse chooses to forgive me because I stopped having that affair. Right? There's just a chain reaction that occurs in every decision. If one person says, well, I don't really care if socks are on the floor, I'm going to leave them there, well, eventually they have to make a decision to pick them up, or they have to go out and buy new socks. It doesn't matter. At some point, you have to give them the time to figure it out for themselves. And BJLY, I couldn't read that. She says you have to give them time to change and don't bring up the past mistakes. That's so hard to do. And once you start bringing up past mistakes, you got to recognize within yourself that you're punishing your spouse by doing that. If their past mistakes are really hurting you, you have the right to tell them that their past mistakes are still deeply hurting you. But there is a time to do that, and the time is not in the middle of a fight. The time to do that is when you guys are not emotionally charged. Because guys, listen, your spouse is going to do things that deeply devastate you. That is what happens in all relationships. Your spouse is going to do things you don't like. They're going to do things that hurt you, whether they meant to or not. They're going to be in sin. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to hurt them, okay? There are going to be things that you guys do that genuinely hurt one another, and those hurts and that pain is going to last for years and years to come, depending on what it is. Look, my husband and I, man, we're still working through all the ways we messed up with one another the first, 10 years of our marriage. And that stuff still comes up every now and then. And it was like, but you used to be this way. And we have to, one, remind ourselves that both of us have made a lot of changes and we're no longer like that. And two, we do have to be allowed to say to one another, that really did hurt me, and I'm still dealing with the residual effects of how you hurt me. My mindset is to feel this way about the situation because of how you used to act in that situation. So there is a time when you can say to your spouse, your actions really hurt me, but it shouldn't be in a way of punishing them or in the midst of a heated discussion where you're both trying to get your own way. Because really what it turns out to be is y'all are fighting and you want them to do this and they don't want to. And then you're like, well, I'm going to bring up every hurtful thing you've ever done. Okay, I'm not saying those hurtful things don't still hurt you, but that's not the time to talk about it, if you know what I mean. In your marriage, this is very hard. But let me tell you something. When you have children, there's going to come a point when they're going to do what they want to do, and it doesn't matter what you try to get them to do. You're not going to be able to force them. There's not going to be enough punishments to get them to change. So really, I think God has given you that time now. If you have young children, or if you don't have children at all, I don't know where you're at. Maybe you have grown children, all right? And this lesson will apply to you. But in your marriage, you have to figure out how to, one, be one person, because God joins you together, but still keep your individuality. And part of that is just letting the other person be who they are. And I'm not saying that you need to let them continually do things that devastate you or hurt you, but you can't change them. Okay, you can't. You cannot change your spouse, and you can't change your kids either. While they're young, before they're old enough to move out, if they didn't clean their room, you need to discipline them because they didn't do something you asked them to do. That is good in that relationship, but there will come a day when your teenagers will be in rebellion towards you, or maybe they'll be grown children and they're not going to do what you want them to do, and you cannot make them. And so you're getting that practice now with your spouse. You can't make your spouse do things. Yes, love your spouse. Give them grace, because honestly, you want that too, right? And one thing that I know a lot of people deal with is in a situation, whatever the argument is, you're going to think you're right. You would be kind of crazy to not think you're right. But when you really listen to what your spouse has to say, you might start seeing, okay, I did some things that hurt them too, and now they're reacting out of their hurt. So when you're in a very difficult situation with your spouse, whatever that fight is, okay, it could be very serious or it could be less serious. And like I said, I think all issues in marriage can become serious. And I think it's those little things like the chore situation that oftentimes will destroy a marriage because nobody gives that as much, attention. If there is an affair that happens, or if there is some breach of trust, you guys both tend to end up going to counseling. You guys get extra support. Who goes to counseling because their spouse won't pick up the laundry? I don't know anybody going to counseling for that. Maybe they do, but it's those things aren't taken as seriously by either party, and they really gotta be, because those are the things that oftentimes just pile up and destroy your marriage. So don't leave things, let things go per se. Don't feel like you can't ever share your feelings with your spouse because you can't change them. But if you go to them with the right attitude, in love, with grace, and share how something they are doing is making you feel, and then give them the choice. Let them make the choice. And this past Sunday, my husband was preaching at the church that we attend, and he said that God created his own enemies. Isn't that true? God created us. We were enemies of God, the creator of the universe. He created us. He created angels. He gave us a free choice, and he lets us make it, even though it hurts him. And in your marriage, you must give your spouse a free choice. Let them decide. What if God does that for us in our relationships, if he gives us a free choice and he doesn't force us into the thing that he knows would be best for us. And he lets us, let's see, you're a difficult housewife, huh? If God allows us to make our own choices without forcing us, shouldn't we take our cues from that? There has to be a reason, right? He's a perfect God. He's all-knowing. He's completely wise. If that's how God handles his relationship with us, then that's how we need to be handling our relationships with one another. So when you're in a difficult spot with your spouse, whether you are serious problems or lesser problems, ask yourself, first of all, why is this bothering me? Really get to the root of the issue. Is it really about the fact that the dishes aren't loaded properly, or is there some other issue? And can I resolve it within myself? Because you might actually find that you can resolve some issues within yourself, like those OCD people with the tendencies, and I have them too, and we all have our thing. Maybe you just can be like, man, this is just a matter of preference, and that's not their preference. Or maybe there is a legit thing that is going on where they are hurting you, and you need to go to them. You need to go to them with grace, love, and kindness to work through a problem, not to start a fight. We have a saying around here, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. You come in a door ready to have a fight, taking the gloves off, we're going to have a fight. So don't go into that conversation with your spouse ready to fight. Don't have that in your mind already. Well, they're never going to listen to me, and they don't even like, they don't ever listen to what I have to say or whatever. If you go ahead and start beefing up a fight in your mind before you go to your spouse about it, you likely are not going to go in a good way. So give them the benefit of the doubt that they will respond positively, and then give them the time to make the changes. And if they don't make the changes, then you have to base your response off of that in a healthy way. Establish some boundaries. And some of it you might have to resolve within yourself. Some of it you might just have to let the dishes pile up and let that go. Maybe they have a relationship with another person that you don't agree with, and in that you have to start saying, okay, well, you're not responding to me like we're married, so I'm going to stop living like we're married. Whatever that means, if you know what I mean. So I know that there are people that are watching that are in some very difficult things in their marriage, and some of you that are just starting to see, okay, we've got difference of opinion here, and how are we going to work through that? So I encourage you to let your spouse be who they are. It is very hard. It is very hard when they do something that you advise them not to do, and then they come back and they realize, oh, she was right. Try not to be like, well, I told you so. They may say, well, you did tell me this, and I totally ignored you. But we all have to get there on our own, and I want to be allowed to get there on my own. I want to be allowed to make mistakes. I want to be allowed to make my own decisions. So I got to allow the other people in my life to do that same thing. So and I know this is a little bit longer scope, but this has been on my heart for a while, and I've been thinking through it and like, okay, what am I going to get on and say? Because there are so many people out there in hurting situations, and they want an answer. And guys, sometimes you just have to go through the really, really hard stuff with your spouse so you can walk out on the other side and both be better people. Whatever that means. Whatever that means. But you have to go through the hard stuff. So I encourage you today, if you are, I encourage you today to, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know sometimes I get on here and I'm super chatty. And I just keep talking and don't know when to quit. So thank you guys for joining me. If you'd like to see what I'm blogging about this week, go to lovehopeadventure.com. And if you want to, let me remind you about this. If you want to be entered into this giveaway, first of all, you need to know I gotta have your address. I cannot mail this to you without an address. So sometimes I have people say, I want to be entered in your thing, and they win, and then they won't give me their address. So don't enter to win if you don't want me to have the ability to mail it to you. And you can tweet at me, Love Hope Advent. I want to enter your giveaway. That's all you got to do. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully I'll be on tomorrow around the same time. And if you don't have Twitter, just go to my website. You can go to my contact page. There's my email address. And you can email me. I want to be entered into your giveaway. So Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you guys tomorrow.